They are wondering why modern movies, by and large, are so bad. There are two directors who I blame the decline of modern cinema on, one being Wes Anderson, the other being Quentin Tarantino. Now, I have a little bit of respect for Wes Anderson because while his movies do heavily borrow a ton of influence from like Fellini and Godard and French and Italian filmmakers, and they take that and make it into a purified kind of American kitsch, Wes Anderson has his own distinct style that you can call a Wes Anderson movie. Now, he is one of the most repetitive filmmakers, and I don't know how anyone can make the same exact movie 20 times with no variation or experimentation.
You're fired.
But Quentin Tarantino doesn't even have the benefit of his own style. His style is just rehashing blaxploitation and martial arts movies and other cool movies he saw when he was a kid. Somehow Quentin Tarantino has the unique talent of being able to watch hundreds of really cool movies and not picking up on what makes them cool or, why anyone thinks they are cool. I've made a whole video about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was quite a while back. It was when it first came out. And I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is symptomatic of everything that's fundamentally wrong with Quentin Tarantino. A, he's a liar. He talks about the climate of 1960s Hollywood as if he was there, and while he was in Hollywood in 1969, he was like 7, so I really doubt they were letting him into the Whiskey A Go-Go. I really doubt he was having it out with Jim Morrison and Sharon Tate. The other fundamental problem with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that it's one of the most derivative, least original movies ever made. I'm sure that if you've never seen a single movie from 1969, literally one of the most formative years in cinematic history, then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you probably think it's one of the coolest things ever made. But if you have even a little bit of taste in what kind of movies you watch, then you recognize Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for what it really is. A sad guy who wants to make cool movies but doesn't know how to because he doesn't have talent. And if you trace this lineage all the way back to his first movie, My Best Friend's Birthday from 1987, you'll learn exactly why Quentin Tarantino movies are so fundamentally bad and why only dilettantes watch them. One claim I hear quite a bit about why Quentin Tarantino is qualified to be one of the foremost directors in Hollywood today is because he worked at a video rental store in Los Angeles. But it must be kept in mind that back in the 80s, when VHS was the foremost format of choice for everyone, working in a video rental store was about as common as working in a pizzeria or flipping burgers in McDonald's. So, is that the kind of guy you'd really trust to make your movies for you?
How was I supposed to know he was that hunk friend of Tyler's with the beautiful eyes?
I sure wouldn't trust any random blockbuster cashier to make my movies for me. It's nice that he likes VHS and all, but, I'm not going to trust some random blockbuster cashier to make my movies. Just because he sells movies doesn't mean he has good taste in movies. Correlation does not equal causation. And I don't even mean to say that I entirely think that the modern-day director is dead. Paul Thomas Anderson, for instance, is a really great director. You look at some of his movies, There Will Be Blood and Boogie Nights and The Master, and they're all completely different movies with completely different styles. And this is the difference between a real director like Kubrick and a fake director like Tarantino. A real director like Kubrick experiments with several different genres and motifs. You have Dr. Strangelove, a black comedy. You have Full Metal Jacket, an anti-war drama. You have 2001: A Space Odyssey, a sci-fi epic. You have The Shining, a psychological horror. And you have Eyes Wide Shut, an erotic thriller. All very different movies in very different genres. And while Kubrick's style can be identified in every one of them, they're very different movies, and Kubrick plays around with things and messes around with things. You look at Hitchcock movies. Hitchcock is another really great director because he changes things up. You look at The Birds, and it's very different from Vertigo, which in turn is very different from Rear Window, which in turn is very different from Rope. They're very different movies. Even though Hitchcock directs all of them, and they all have that intrinsic Hitchcockian style, Hitchcock tries new things. The problem with Quentin Tarantino is that he's incapable of trying new things, especially since, as he's stated time and again, he's limiting his filmography to like 10 movies, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is his ninth. Of course, My Best Friend's Birthday doesn't factor into this filmography because I think My Best Friend's Birthday is a product so fundamentally embarrassing that if more people were to see it besides the most brainwashed, loyal Quentin Tarantino fan base, his career would be in a shambles. Because My Best Friend's Birthday is a good example of why Quentin Tarantino never acts in any of his movies, because he is annoying to watch and listen to.
I was dealing with Mr. Orange, and he says, "Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. You know, look into my eyes."
The guy is manic. He explodes on screen like a missile, and he really overacts. My Best Friend's Birthday is co-written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, and it stars Quentin Tarantino, which is something none of his other movies do. Overall, I think My Best Friend's Birthday is interesting because it shows what a Quentin Tarantino movie would look like if Quentin Tarantino didn't have the ungodly high budget that's given to him by major movie studios, and if he didn't have every single Hollywood star like Brad Pitt or Samuel L. Jackson at his disposal, and he had to completely use amateurs, just his friends, because, well, I don't blame any of his friends for, not being the best actors because they're complete amateurs. I do blame his script, and I think his direction and script really shows just how talentless this guy is and how incapable he is of producing even the most simple narrative. So, without further ado, let's check out My Best Friend's Birthday, one of the most amateurish, worst movies. It's so bad. Let's check it out. We open the movie up on Quentin Cringeatino's fake radio show where he's interviewing the president of the Eddie Cochran fan club, which isn't something that's real, because nobody cares that much about Eddie Cochran.
On March 29th, 1959, Eddie Cochran actually wiped his mouth with this.
Quentin then launches into an insipid monologue about how he almost committed suicide during the same day that Eddie Cochran died, but then he saw the Partridge Family coming on, and the Partridge Family was so fun that it convinced him not to commit suicide. The only problem with this little anecdote is that Eddie Cochran died in 1960, and the Partridge Family didn't start airing until 1970. Now, you could say that Quentin is just kind of going with artistic license here, but I think he just doesn't know the difference between 1960 and 1970, and he heaps the entire decade into one big thing, which is something he also does in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The man has no handle on history.
For a 3-year-old to be thinking like that, that's really depressing.
We then cut to two of Quentin Tarantino's friends from the Video Archives rental shop. Really bad actors, but they're really trying their hardest to bring some passion into this lifeless script.
Can it be that you, perish the thought, are actually early?
Can it be that you, perish the thought, are early?
One of the friends talks about how they got fucked up on drugs last night, man, and it was something to see, because Quentin Tarantino wants you to know that he's not a youngster. He's a big boy now. He's a big guy. He's a big man, and he does drugs, and he gets fucked up on drugs, man.
Experimenting with this shit. It was so strong. I think a Indian tribe in Brazil has formed this religion around it.
One of the friends gives the other friend a stick of novelty gum, and instead of having a light reaction like, haha, this is some funny gum you give me, the other guy launches into this insane temper tantrum, and he's like, oh my god, I can't believe this. This gum is the worst thing ever. Oh my god.
What the fuck is this shit?
And the Oscar goes to...
One thing I find interesting about Quentin Tarantino's career is that he always gets off scot-free with misogyny and homophobia and racism and things that other directors really wouldn't get off with. For instance, in My Best Friend's Birthday, he seems to treat women like objects. I don't think this is something that, like, you know, a real director like Paul Thomas Anderson would get away with. But when Quentin Tarantino does it, you can say, well, this is what Quentin Tarantino does because he's ironic and he's making fun of 70s exploitation movies which treated women like objects. Ironically, these same 70s exploitation movies he's parodying or criticizing treated women less like objects than Quentin Tarantino does because he is a rampant misogynist.
And you'll notice that Quentin Tarantino directs his friends to use their hands like a fan or a windshield wiper, because that's how Quentin Tarantino uses his hands. He really overstates his body language, and he encourages all his actors and actresses to use their hands like how he uses his hands, because he doesn't know how to write characters that aren't just alternate versions of himself, or just himself.
That you, perish the thought, are actually early?
Next up, we cut to Quentin being an absolute asshole to someone who just called in with a friendly request, being like, hey, if you want to listen to the other radio show, then go listen to the other. I play what I want because I'm the jock. I'm the big DJ on the spin, man. I'll play whatever the fuck I want, man, because I'm Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, someday maybe you can be a jock and you can play what you want to play. Oh, if your taste is respected as mine, you will.
Here we see Quentin's unbridled contempt for women as he insults rival disc jockey Unruly Julie, even though Unruly Julie's show is probably 100 times cooler.
Well, then listen to Unruly Julie then, dickbait.
Next up, the friend who got fucked up last night on drugs comes in with a bag of flour, which they're calling cocaine, because Quentin Tarantino thinks it's fun and edgy to have cocaine in his movie.
I'm Lenny Otis. I'm the head of the Southern California chapter of the Eddie Cochran fan club.
Oh, Otis, like the town drunk on the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh, Otis. Like the town drunk on the Andy Griffith Show. Because we're in Quentin Tarantino land and everyone talks in pop culture references. I get it.
Polly is on the phone right now for me. Listen, don't hang up. Don't hang her up. Keep her on the line. I'll be out there in a minute, okay? Don't let her go under no circumstances. Don't let her go.
Oh, don't hang up. Yeah, I'm totally on the phone right now. For real. I'm totally not just talking into a dead line here. I'm really on the phone.
Quentin Tarantino decides to take the cocaine live on air during the station identification break like a smart guy. And keep in mind, this is before the age of podcasts, so this all has to go through the FCC. As you'd expect, it doesn't go so well for poor Quentin, who, you know, can't conduct his radio show while he's on coke.
Someone to stop me.
Jesus Christ.
Eddie Cochran out. I am in hell!
Next up, Quentin's titular best friend goes to see his girlfriend, and they have absolutely no romantic chemistry, and it's obvious that they're phoning each and every line in, trying to infuse it with emotion, even though Quentin Tarantino doesn't know how to infuse anything with passion or emotion, because he's a robot.
But I never stopped loving you.
I'm a little surprised.
And the Oscar goes to...
Quentin's best friend talks about how he calls her up on the phone just to hear her voice, because that's something that Quentin Tarantino probably does, and that's how he probably thinks women should be treated. You just call them up and are like, heavy breathing.
Oh, you know those phone calls you were getting last month? Well, they'd ring and you'd answer and they'd hang up?
Uh-huh.
Well, that was me. I just had to hear the sound of your voice.
Instead of slapping him in the face or telling him to get the fuck out of her life, she does the rational thing, because keep in mind this is Quentin Tarantino land where all women are gullible and pliable objects, and she embraces him madly in love, because oh my gosh, there's nothing hotter than a guy who calls you up and doesn't say anything and just listens to your voice. That's so hot. That's totally not psychopath behavior there.
I thought you hated me.
I was just bluffing. I just wanted you to think I hated you.
If there's one point I hope to make with this video, it's that Quentin Tarantino, if he was around today, he'd be viewed like morgues. But because he's part of what we commonly term history, even though history is an ongoing process, Quentin Tarantino is considered one of the greatest directors ever. Even though this is the schlock that he was putting out with his buddies from video archives back in 1987.
But oh my gosh, what's this? There's a twist that nobody could have possibly seen coming. As it turns out, this girl is too loose. She hangs out with a bunch of guys, one of whom is hot and strong and big, and he looks like Jesus. And she's like, sorry, chump, I hang out with this guy.
Tell them what part you play.
Jesus.
Of course, this is the Quentin Tarantino verse, and as you know, according to Quentin Tarantino, all women are too loose and those absolute sluts, those absolute degenerates. You're hanging out with too many guys. Oh my gosh, this is awful. Ugh. Because that's how Quentin Tarantino thinks every woman is, just disloyal and sleeping around with like 50 men. You know, that's the world according to Quentin Tarantino there.
So we better get a move on.
Okay, whatever.
Luckily, Quentin is there to come to the rescue because he does what he always does when he's having trouble with women. He decides to hire a prostitute for his best friend who just went through a traumatic breakup. That'll cheer him up. Sure, Quentin, you absolute stand-up guy. Hire a prostitute for your best friend who just went through a breakup because, as everyone knows, quick sex with a prostitute is sure to cure any of your romantic problems.
He's just the best guy that there is in the world. And I'd only set him up with somebody who's like really cool like you.
Quentin writes in a line about the distinction between a call girl and a common whore because he wants the audience to know that he's slept around quite a bit with a lot of prostitutes in his time. He's played the field, and he knows just how to get these women who he's paying to do whatever he wants because he's a complete ladies' man. Did he mention that he's a big boy now? He isn't a youngster. He's out here buying prostitutes.
I'm not a whore. I'm a call girl, and call girls, well, they're a lot more classier.
Usually, the going rate is what I usually do.
Well, you know, the going rate is usually...
Oh, yeah, I knew that. I knew that when I came over here, that you were a call girl. I mean, you're not a whore, and I would never, ever even think about getting a whore for Mickey, because he's the best, and you're class.
Really?
Yes.
The Oscar goes to...
Then the prostitute gives the most unnatural reaction to receiving a mere $40 that anyone's ever given in the history of cinema either. I mean, I know it's $40 in 1987 money, but still, like, prostitutes are expensive, so for $40 you'd think she'd just be like, oh, but she's like, wow.
Wow. Wow, Quentin. A whole $10? You absolute saint, thank you.
Should we talk price now or later?
Come again?
Price, you know, my price.
You mean I have to pay you for this? I thought you were going to do it for free.
Quentin really thinks this revolving shot technique is cool. Look at what a cinematographer Quentin is. Look at what an auteur Quentin is as he hires this prostitute. He knows where to find the prostitutes because he's a big boy.
In this movie, we see the beginning of a few trends in Quentin Tarantino's later career. A. Anecdotes that Quentin Tarantino thinks will turn a really boring story interesting, even though the anecdotes are equally uninteresting.
Well, I watched it, and it was a really funny episode. It was the one where Danny got in trouble with the mom.
We see the use of really good music to bolster up the fact that the script is weak and full of plot holes and not written like a script.
You're so square, baby, I don't care. The guy was like a real.
And of course, we have all the references to drugs and sex because Quentin wants us to know that he's a really big boy.
I got something for you.
Holy shit.
He isn't a juvenile. He's a really big boy now. Oh yeah, Quentin Tarantino. He's a mature guy and he has sex.
Quentin keeps touching his nose. We then cut to the interior of a cake shop, and the guy who runs the cake shop is probably just a real cake shop owner that Quentin is duped into appearing in this mediocre garbage.
Honey, it's still going strong, am I right?
They launch into a long spiel where Quentin acts as if knowing the title of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band makes him some kind of unique individual with a groundbreakingly underhanded taste in music. Hey, have you heard of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? It's kind of some niche shit.
Came out with Sergeant Lonely. What was it?
Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club
Sergeant
Band.
Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of it, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You know, I'm Quentin Totitos, and I'm kind of into some niche shit, you know? I'm kind of into some niche stuff like that. Yeah.
Then he launches into a diatribe about how he's totally not gay, but he'd really like to have sex with Elvis because Elvis was just so hot. Quentin Tarantino is playing a character who's obsessed with rockabilly, but I think Quentin is just obsessed with rockabilly and Elvis.
Elvis looked good. I'm no fag, but Elvis was good looking.
I just find it interesting that Quentin Tarantino can say the F word in his first movie and have literally zero repercussions because everyone just expects that this is how Quentin Tarantino is. I think this sets a bad standard for directors in general.
Quentin makes sure to play copyrighted music in the background that even today is detected by YouTube's Content ID system because Quentin Tarantino just isn't good at making up his own music. He just takes other people's music and says, "This is my movie now, bitch." In the next scene, Quentin Tarantino's best friend is accosted in the shower by the prostitute Quentin hired.
Hi, Mickey. I'm Misty Knight, your birthday surprise.
And instead of reacting like how a real person would, telling this strange woman who you've never met before to get out of your apartment, he's like, "Oh, a prostitute. I can have sex with her."
In here, you come out there and we will start our party. Okay? Okay. Oh, and keep it casual. What you have on's fine.
Half of my best friend's birthday is lost. The original cut is 70 minutes, but what we have is only 30 minutes, which leads, of course, to even a more nonsense storyline than what was already given. The problem is that Quentin Tarantino did not give a shit about his movie enough to preserve it. And before you jump to the conclusion, oh, well, it was the old days. It wasn't as easy to preserve something back then. This was shot on VHS. You press a button and it's copied. He could have made 50 copies of this thing if he wanted to. But the fact of the matter is, he was probably as much embarrassed by it as we, the audience, are embarrassed by watching it.
The next thing you know, we're looking at miles and miles of gams because Quentin wants us to know that he's straight and he finds the female form attractive.
There's one person nobody can resist, and that's a baby. So love made baby soft.
This girl says something, but you can't hear what she's saying because the copyrighted rock music is playing so loud over her that her dialogue is completely unintelligible. You think Quentin Tarantino just doesn't know how to master audio. I don't think this is an artistic decision or anything. I just think he doesn't know how to master audio correctly. Now her boyfriend shows up. This black guy is the only half-decent actor in the entire movie, as you might expect, but all his lines are also mumbled up by all the copyrighted rock music that's playing over him. Man, can Quentin Tarantino just turn the music down a little? You know, some people like to hear what the characters are saying. We cut back to the cake shop, and there's a hilarious joke about how Quentin Tarantino has written an 80,000-word novel to go on the cake, and the cake shop guy is like, "Hey, that's too long. I can't fit more words on this cake than it's physically possible to write on this cake." Quentin Tarantino thinks this is a really funny joke. Haha, good for you, Quentin. This is such a funny comedy. You're going to be the next John Landis in no time.
Friendship will always be the love between Mickey and me. The joy of always knowing our love is growing because our friendship is showing through the nose of the...
Hold, time out, Green Bay. I can't fit that all on fucking cake.
Mean, nasty, rude. I mean, he couldn't give a fuck about anything except rocking and rolling, live fast, die young, and have a good-looking corpse.
Look, I'm not saying I'm, like, into Elvis or anything, but man, is Elvis hot.
If ever I had to fuck a guy, I mean, had to because, like, my life depended on it, I'd fuck Elvis.
Now, if you look at Quentin Tarantino's career, As a kind of progression of events, you might think that he's advanced in recent years, but just keep in mind that if My Best Friend's Birthday was recast with Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt in the leading roles, you would probably think it was incredible, even if the script and direction was exactly the same. That's what Quentin Tarantino is able to do, because he has magical amounts of money and zero talent, and he hasn't changed since My Best Friend's Birthday. He's still the exact same guy.
Now Quentin Tarantino calls up his old girlfriend.
Hello?
Hello, baby.
Hello, baby. This is the Big Bopper. You wanna have sex?
She tells him that Eddie, her new boyfriend, is mean and strong.
He is really strong.
And because Quentin Tarantino doesn't know how to tell a coherent narrative, they cut to a clip of Eddie being mean and strong. In case you forgot that Eddie is mean and strong, it shows him lifting a giant barbell because he's mean and strong. Uh-oh, what's Eddie gonna do?
Really mean.
My Best Friend's Birthday is really concentrated cringe, and I think it's crazy that My Best Friend's Birthday has a Wikipedia article, whereas my movie, Vice, doesn't. I think Wikipedia just gives favoritism to weirdos like Quentin Tarantino, and completely ignores perfectly great movies like mine. I don't think this VHS dumpster dropping, deserves a Wikipedia article. Again, I don't mean to bash any of the poor actors who were dragged into this. Most of the film's budget probably went towards hiring them to say all this stupid shit that Quentin Tarantino wrote and directed.
He's opened up a Pandora's box and he's gonna wish it kept closed.
However, I do think that you can make a good movie with your friends, so long as your friends aren't Quentin Tarantino. You'll probably be able to make a fine movie with your friends, on a budget of nothing, just so long as it's not this.
The reason I called you is because I'm having a party and I want you to come down here. And it's in my place, except it's for my best friend Mickey.
For a movie called My Best Friend's Birthday, the best friend doesn't get much screen time.
You and Clarence aren't what? You and Clarence don't go to gay bars together, do you?
Oh gosh, a guy in a shower? I bet you must be a homosexual.
But here, he and the black guy engage in a cheesy martial arts homage fight scene, because I guess this is how Quentin Tarantino thinks mature people sort out their differences. The choreography is terrible, but you know what they say, Quentin Tarantino just saw one Bruce Lee movie and he's like, oh, I can do this, no prob. I don't have Bruce Lee or anything, but I'll just get two guys and they can make poses and make karate noises, and it'll be just like this Bruce Lee movie.
Whatcha?
One of the biggest problems, I think, with Quentin Tarantino's movies is that they're both excruciatingly misogynistic and excruciatingly horny, to the point where Quentin Tarantino feels the need to mention or reference his foot fetish all the time. And I don't mean to kink shame anyone, I just mean to kink shame Quentin Tarantino, because there is no reason why the audience would need to know about your foot fetish, you know? Nobody needs to know about that. It's not interesting. It doesn't make you interesting.
I have a foot fetish.
Like, imagine if, for instance, a real director like Kubrick had an armpit fetish, and instead of keeping it to himself, he felt the need to insert it into all his movies. So, in 2001: A Space Odyssey, a part where, Bowman's just picked up the dead guy out in space, he's telling Hal to open the pod bay doors. He's like, open the pod bay doors, Hal. And Hal is like, I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that. And then Bowman's like, oh dang, I guess I gotta shave my armpits now. Again, there's nothing wrong with full frontal nudity in movies. I don't mind that one bit. When the Colt in Eyed Wide Shut is naked, I don't mind, because it fits within the narrative context of the movie. When all the cult members start getting naked in Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, I don't mind, because it makes sense within the narrative context of the movie. However, when the young hitchhiker, who within the narrative of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is implied to be underage, puts her feet up on the dashboard, and I know that Quentin Tarantino, the little cheddar goblin, is chuckling behind the camera like, "Ooh, show me those feet." That's just gross, and it doesn't make sense within the narrative context of the movie. It's just in there for Quentin Tarantino, and he can make his foot fetish films on his own time. You know, I pay to watch a movie. I don't pay to watch Margot Robbie's feet for 50 minutes, you know? I don't care.
Next up, we cut to Quentin's answering machine, and just in case you forgot how mean and strong Eddie is, he says, "I'm mean and I'm strong and I'm going to come and kill you, Quentin, you rotten bastard."
I'm the man who's gonna drop kick you to hell.
Uh-oh, Eddie is on the warpath. What's gonna happen now? Next up, we cut to a long extended shot of Quentin's bedroom, which is coated in movie posters, because Quentin wants you to know how many cool movies he's seen. Because if he's seen a lot of cool movies, that means he makes cool movies, right? Because, I mean, you can't just see 100 cool movies and not pick up on any of the things that make them cool or entertaining, right? That wouldn't make much sense, right?
Right now.
At this point, the movie starts devolving into random nonsense that you can barely understand, because at this point, even Quentin didn't give a shit.
To wait until I get done here. I'll find somebody for you.
In case you forgot that Eddie is mean and strong, he takes this random hotel clerk and grips his face. You know, because he's mean and strong. Well, at least the film has kind of sort of an ending, even though half of it is lost forever. Quentin Tarantino and the prostitute he hired for his best friend end up making out, and I guess the best friend is just still in the shower or something.
From now on, I make my own decisions.
Quentin Tarantino talks about how he has a huge foot fetish, and the prostitute is really turned on by this. The prostitute talks about how she was inspired to become a prostitute by the Brian De Palma film Dressed to Kill, because in Quentin Tarantino's bizarre misogynist view of the world, every woman who saw that movie was just like, "Oh, there's a prostitute in this movie. Dang, I guess that's my life from now on, to please men."
Dressed to Kill.
Wonderful movie. Excellent movie. I love that movie.
You liked it?
I loved it. Brian De Palma, he's a real mean motor scooter.
I loved him. I love his films. I love him. You remember Nancy Allen in it?
Remember, how can I forget her?
Okay, was she a knockout or what?
They should pass a law that says Nancy Allen has to have sex with me anytime I want.
The end. No, really, that's the end. There's no more to this movie. What happens with Eddie? Who knows? What happens with the best friend? Who knows? Is there a party? Who knows? Nobody knows anything, because Quentin Tarantino doesn't know. He just made this shit up as he went along. And that's my best friend's birthday for you. Garbage. I thought it would be interesting to end this video by reading some of the really laughable comments under it. One comment says, "I find it funny that people are saying this is trash. This was done on a budget of what, less than nothing? Reservoir Dogs was done on like nothing. I'd like to see you write, direct, and star in your own film as good as this. You do realize this wasn't just the first film he made, it was the first film he wrote. This is the screenplay for True Romance for any of you that didn't know. So I'd like to see you write, direct, and star in a film this good, and then have it go on to be a major motion picture. And oh yeah, go on to be one of the biggest people in Hollywood today." You know, I don't think budget is much of an issue. You don't need a big budget to make a good movie. You just need a lot of talent. Like, for instance, David Lynch's Eraserhead was made on a budget of only about $10,000, and it looks absolutely spectacular. It looks like it has a budget of at least $100,000. Now, this movie, despite what this commenter says, was not made on a budget of less than nothing. It was made on $5,000. I'm not even sure where any of that money went, considering every scene is just filmed in Quentin Tarantino's dingy apartment. Maybe it's for all the licensed music, or maybe Quentin Tarantino didn't even pay for the music. Regardless, you don't need a big budget to make a good movie. Primer is only $7,000, which, isn't that much more than this. I'm sure Quentin Tarantino, at this point in his career, could have afforded a $7,000 movie. My movie Vice was produced on a budget of $4.50, making it effectively, at least as far as I know, the lowest budget film ever made, and it's a better movie than this. You can make a much better movie than this. Stop giving Quentin Tarantino excuses for his absolute crap. Another really funny comment. I can't believe, have you all ever realized that one day this guy will give us Django Unchained? Yes, I can buy that, given that Quentin Tarantino thinks that black people say things like, I'm a lawnmower and your ass is grass, and unironically writes that into the script. Yeah, I can buy that this guy will give us Django Unchained. He's not going to give us Shaft or Coffee or Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, because those are good movies. And Django Unchained isn't that good. It's painfully mediocre, just like this. Here we have a comment. I have watched some shit student films in my day, and it's insane how this film is basically a precursor to what would come. It's all there. The rhetoric, the filmmaking. He's more Godard with all those quick cuts. It's pure QT in just the span of 30 minutes. It's a shame he never took on this material as a show or a feature. I hope he comes back to it still. Who here wants an 80s style sitcom about these people on Netflix written by QT? Please, dear God, no, let's not do that, okay? Let's not. Let's not turn Quentin Tarantino's shit student film into an 80s style sitcom. First off, because this movie isn't even trying to imitate an 80s style sitcom, according to Quentin himself, it's trying to imitate a Martin and Lewis comedy, which is about as far from it as I think you can possibly get, but there's nothing here of value or substance. It's a really bad movie. Just stop making excuses, and please stop comparing Quentin Tarantino to fucking Godard, okay? One commenter says he reuses that gag 32 years later in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, no shit, because he has no originality. The last comment here I find kind of interesting. Outstanding! Love the elements that work directly into future movies. Heroin/coke, New Call Girl, Elvis, killer music, comic books, a true gem to find this. Believe it or not, Quentin Tarantino didn't invent Elvis, or prostitutes, or cocaine, or rock music, or comic books. He stole those things. So, nah, dog.
So there you have it. That's my best friend's birthday. One of the least interesting, least satisfying, and most revealing films, probably of the 20th century. It's an absolute shambles, and I'm glad that it wasn't entirely lost, because I think with this, we have a rare glimpse into the mad incompetence of Quentin Tarantino, one of the worst filmmakers on the scene today. I'm thoroughly convinced that if Quentin Tarantino just filmed himself taking a shit, Wikipedia would consider it notable enough to give a Wikipedia article to. This is the kind of thing that would probably end up on America's Funniest Home Videos if it wasn't directed by Tarantino, the great and powerful. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, as they say. I think my best friend's birthday is inspiring to any amateur filmmakers out there, because you know that while your movie might be rough and it might be low budget and you can't get the best actors and you're just doing it with your friends, at least it won't be this hot steaming garbage, and at least you're not Quentin Tarantino and you don't mistreat your female actresses, and that's nice and wholesome. I think it can be a real inspiration to a lot of amateur filmmakers out there, you know, just to say, at least you're not this. At least you haven't sunk this low into depravity. That said, that's my best friend's birthday. I think it's a really interesting film in a lot of ways because it shows how Quentin Tarantino actually is. He's a doofus, and he has no right to be considered one of the foremost experts in film. Just because you watch a bunch of cool movies does not mean you'll understand what makes those movies cool. And if all you can do is reference those movies nonstop and go, hey, I watched Enter the Dragon. Hey, I watched Marlon Brando. Hey, I watched Telly Savalas. Hey, remember Sergio Leone? I watched Sergio Leone. Then you haven't made a movie. You've made 120 minutes of movie references, and that's not much of a movie.
I'm in the movie. I'm Sharon Tate.
It's mercifully short, unlike Quentin Tarantino's other dumpster droppings. It's only 30 minutes. Thank gosh the 70-minute didn't make the cut, or it would have been even more unbearable nonsense, courtesy of this wackadoodle.
The date. He's going on the date. He's going on the date with Mia Wallace. He's going on the date. I
think Quentin Tarantino's career is a lot like if you gave your annoying college roommate who always talks about owning the SJW as a camcorder and told him to make one of the most hackneyed movies of all time, just filled with references to pop culture shit. That's how I feel Quentin Tarantino's career has gone. I think Quentin Tarantino, nobody should take him seriously as a filmmaker, and if you want to be the next Quentin Tarantino or something, it's like, why? Why not be the next Paul Thomas Anderson? The Master's a good movie. There Will Be Blood's a good movie. Boogie Nights, fine movie. Like, Boogie Nights is about the 70s, which is the decade that Quentin Tarantino completely ripped off and used as his aesthetic. I think it's ridiculous to think that Quentin Tarantino even came up with anything. And My Best Friend's Birthday is great proof of that. It's the definitive Quentin Tarantino film. Nothing but pop culture references, no plot. It tries to be a comedy, but it fails at even being that. You will be laughing, but you won't be laughing with the film. You'll be laughing at it because it's so bad. Quentin Tarantino, I think, is a director who is actively hurting cinema and hurting movies, and I think it's up to people to have some good taste and watch something like, an actual movie that Quentin Tarantino references, because somehow he watches all these good movies, but he doesn't pick up on what makes them good. He's just like, oh, Marlon Brando? I'm going to mention Marlon Brando in my movie because Marlon Brando movies are good. That'll make my movie good by association. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. If you watch Death Proof and you don't watch Death Race 2000, you're a dilettante. You don't understand what makes movies good, and I suppose I kind of envy you because you're able to enjoy something with absolutely no merit or value against all odds. It's My Best Friend's Birthday. What a colossal train wreck. What an absolute insult to the medium of film itself. I think if the Lumiere brothers had known that Quentin Tarantino is going to come along in 1987 and make that absolute festering wound of the cinematic medium, I think the Lumiere brothers probably would have tossed their new invention right into the trash heap, because my gosh, does My Best Friend's Birthday strike me as the kind of shit that would not even make the cut on a VHS trash compilation volume 16 that you'd find in your local Walmart bargain bin.
People pay for a good time girl. They want a good time, not get involved in some miasma.
My Best Friend's Birthday is, I think, an important film because it really shows just how Quentin Tarantino is when he's really in his element, really getting into it, and really taking the helm as a director. You don't get something like A Clockwork Orange or Barry Lyndon or 2001: A Space Odyssey or The Master. You get something called Pulp Fiction, which is just John Travolta trying to be his character from Grease, and Uma Thurman just dressed in this anachronistic dress, and it's annoying and insipid and bad. And I think Quentin Tarantino is the death of movies. He's like an all-consuming black hole entity. He's like a quasar, That's how it is. That's My Best Friend's Birthday, and what an absolute delight that was.
Quentin Tarantino is a creepy cheddar goblin. Don't watch Quentin Tarantino movies. If you watch Quentin Tarantino movies, you're asking to be publicly ridiculed. Don't watch Quentin Tarantino movies because they are derivative garbage. And he has a foot fetish that he feels the need to insert into every single one of his films, whether you want it to be or not. He's just creepy and weird like that, and I don't like him because, oh yeah, Quentin Tarantino exploits his female actresses to do degrading things. He thinks every woman is a prostitute for his sexual pleasure, cause Quentin Tarantino is a creepy little cheese goblin. Don't trust what the man has to say. Every single movie is a giant ripoff of Carnal Knowledge or Deliverance, which he saw when he was like 11, and he didn't understand why those movies were good, and then he's lying. Oh yeah, Quentin Tarantino is a creepy little cheddar goblin. He lives in the closet under the sink. I don't care what you think. If you watch Quentin Tarantino movies, you're an imbecile and you don't know what a good movie is. What's wrong with you? Do you think that this guy actually has any talent? He's a goddamn amateur. And Hollywood should be ashamed for the levels at which they've propped him up. This guy does not have a brain. Quentin Tarantino is a creepy little cheddar goblin. Yes, Quentin Tarantino is a creepy little cheddar goblin. Don't pay any attention to what this cheddar goblin has to say. Don't watch any of his movies, they're all cinematic trash. Don't even save them for another day. Cause Quentin Tarantino is a creepy little cheddar goblin, yeah. He's a creepy little cheddar goblin, and he's bringing the savings to you.
I am in hell! I have a foot fetish. They should pass a law that says Nancy Ellen has to have sex with me anytime I want.